Hello everyone and welcome to today's kitchen session, Dancing in the Street, Choreographers' Creative Responses to Changing Times. My name is Mark and I'm a HE advisor here at the University of Chester, and today I am joined by Dr. Malaika Sarco-Thomas, Programme Leader for the BA Honours Dance Programme in the Department of Music, Media and Performance. You'll be delivering the session. You'll see us shortly along with Claire and Zazel, who are both helping behind the scenes today. I'll start by reassuring you that your video and audio are not shared at all during the course of this session. In terms of how today will work, I will be shortly handed over to Malaika. During the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions in the chat function on the right hand side of the screen. You can ask questions anonymously if you wish. You just need to have tick the box to say that you wish to be anonymous. You can also like other questions that people may have asked and answer any questions that Malaika may ask by responding in the chat function. Claire and Zazel will ask Malaika your questions at the end of the session. So I think that's everything for now. Over to you, Malaika.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, if you're watching this at a different time of day than the live session. And welcome to the live session if you're here with us now. So it's really lovely to meet you all. We're going to talk about dancing in different places. So welcome to my presentation called Dancing in the Streets, Choreographers' Creative Responses to Changing Times. Where do you like to dance? That's my first question to you. Hopefully if you're here, you've had a boogie at some point. As a result of COVID, it's probably been indoors, but maybe it's been outdoors. We've had a lot of interesting responses to our changing times in terms of how dancers have brought themselves to the COVID-19 challenge. And this presentation is going to look at dance in different sites, dance in different places, and some exciting examples that I find inspiring that I'm going to share with you to hopefully inspire your practice and spark some ideas for you as well. So let's get started. This image here, you may recognize if you're from the area. This is from Company Chameleon, who are based in Manchester and do a lot of dance in the streets in Manchester, but also in different festivals around the world. They regularly bring their dance outdoors, which is fantastic. So let's start by just looking at what site offers to dancers. If you consider the space that you're in right now, whatever space it might be, if you imagine that you were suddenly transported to this space and had never been in it before, what might it offer you in terms of an idea as a setting? What kind of theater setting might it suggest to you? Interesting thing, and an interesting exercise to play with yourself. So we can think of a site as multiple things. As soon as we leave the indoor theater space, the comfort of the dance studio, we find ourselves in someplace else. That place we call a site. It could function as a place. It can function as a palimpsest, which is a fancy word for a place where a story gets written over and over with different layers. A site can be a location. A site can be a setting, like a forest setting for a dance, for example. Site can bring us the idea of space, different volumes of space, qualities of space, also through architecture. And dancing in a site can be an experience that invites different kinds of possibilities for audience interaction and connection. So we'll look at some of these examples. So site as place. So here we have some images from Company Chameleon again. On the left, we have Push, and on the right, an image from a work called Of Man and Beast. Now, since the lockdown, Company Chameleon have made these two works fully available online, but they started out as site-based pieces or places that performances that take place in the street, dancing in public spaces. Company Chameleon in these pieces have combined contemporary dance, contact improvisation, parkour, martial arts, partnering, and b-boying skills and languages to develop dance theater that communicates about the human experience. By presenting these outdoors, they've reached a much wider audience and brought their work to different kinds of places that then might normally be seen inside, than might normally be available to them by working only inside a dance theater. There's also a lovely example that some of you may have encountered at some point. Choreographer Lee Anderson has a dance film called Cross Channel that was produced in 1991, but she looks at sight as place by looking at the English Channel and the idea of holiday makers crossing the channel. And it's a kind of a fun play on the English holiday, the seaside holiday, and the sort of vacation mode that she does with her two dance companies, an all-woman dance company and an all-male dance company. But one thing that this example brings to light is that sight dance can be beautifully captured on film. So by working in different sites, we can create some lovely dance films. Speaking of dance films, here's another example of sight as place by Boombox. It's a piece called Boombox Eriri. Sorry, I might be pronouncing that wrong. A company called Migrations in Wales. And what they did was they asked, I think, 100 people to dance to their favorite song in their favorite location. And then they cut all of these together. So I think there's a series of 100 people dancing about 3 seconds each to their favorite song in their favorite location in Wales. So it's connecting place with people and dance. It's a lovely project. I invite you to check it out. So what does site-specific art do and why is it unique? A little bit of theory here. Site-specific art challenged originally modernist ideas of a tabula rasa meaning a blank slate in which art is placed. And it also challenged the idea of a disembodied eye that views the work. In other words, you can't separate the context from the artwork. Site art challenges viewers to recognize the importance of context to the meaning of the work. We are always in a place, we are always in a body, we are always in a location, and that is actually inherent and integral to every piece of artwork that we see. The other beautiful thing that site-specific art began to do when it was kind of introduced in the early 1960s as a particular theme of visual art is it resisted the commodification of the art object. If the dance takes place in a particular site, how do you sell it and transport it somewhere else? It becomes a different kettle of fish, if you like. So it ties something to a location in a really important way. This is from Mi-Wang Kwan's book, One Place After Another, Notes on Site Specificity, his article. Okay, so now we're going to look at an example of another site work called Physical Postcards, which is a project developed by a dance artist in Cornwall called Lois Taylor. This is an example, I would say, of site as palimpsest. Now, palimpsest, like I said, is a fancy word for a document where stories are written layer by layer over top. So a beach, for example, can be a place where multiple stories take place. The Physical Postcards project is an initiative to bring messages from one place to another to life through dance, through short video performances. And this is a project that you can also get involved with. There's a website, physicalpostcards.co.uk, sending a message from one place to another. Another example of rewriting a story of a site with dance is in this project here by Stephen Koplovitz, choreographer, with his dance group called Task Force. And they created a series of works called Liquid Landscapes that took place in Devon in 2009. I was a part of this project and helped rehearsal direction for one of the sites in Dartington. And the idea was a celebration of water and the history of water through dancing at different sites. This image is from the Plymouth Lido that took place as one of 7 performances across Devon. So another celebration of water you can see here. And here we have an example of using site as a location to develop a sense of appreciation of history. This is a performance, a site-specific dance piece by choreographer Rosemary Lee that took place in Cornwall, and the piece is called Passage for Parr. And Parr is an area of Cornwall, a town and a beach where the tide goes out really far during each change during the day. And she created a piece for, I think 30 women, I may have the number wrong, but a large number of women who were celebrating the history of the town and the area and its woolen mills as well, and the history of weaving that took place as an industry there and that sustained the economy for many years. The footsteps that they take and the images that they made in the sand are specific to that location and that history of Cornwall. So we can also look at site-specific dance as a continuum, if you like. If we think about performance that takes place inside the theater building, that's a kind of a site. If we move outside the theater building, for example, Shakespeare in the Park, we can still take the same piece of performance, but just put it somewhere else and see how that changes it. We can move along the continuum and create work that is sympathetic to a site. For example, changing the idea of a story or performance to adapt to that specific site. We can make work that is site generic, for example, a series of works for swimming pools or car parks. Or we can make something very specific that can only take place in that particular site, and that is what we would call site-specific. So this sketch, or this continuum, comes from Rights and Sites and is cited on their website. And so now I'd like to use that idea to give an example of site as setting. So this is one of my favorite pieces of work that I've been researching recently. It's by a choreographer named Janice Claxton. She created a series of duets that pop up in public spaces. Here you see one in, I believe, a shopping mall or sort of outdoor kind of public square area. She created a series of 6 duets that are about love, and each of them have a slightly different story. But the idea is that they pop up in these public spaces and surprise people who get to see them. Here are some other images from these fragments of love. This work has been award-winning. As you can see, it's been performed in New York, in Asia, a number of big cities and small towns all around the world, indoors and outdoors in public spaces. And the idea is they also invite kind of spontaneous spectatorship from people who are not expecting to see them, but you can also go and see the performance as it's advertised. So what I like about Janice Claxton is she says she has a real passion for sharing dance with everybody, not just people who already see dance. And one of her quotes she said is, "I have learned that there is a huge audience of contemporary dance lovers, but most of them do not yet know that they are fans." So her mission is really to bring dance to more people and create more dance fans and dance lovers by putting dance in unexpected places. One of the works that she's also known for is a piece called Enclosure 99, Humans, where she put her dance company inside an enclosure at a zoo. She did this at several points in 2008, 2010, and 2011. And basically advertised the enclosure as a study of humans, as a particular kind of animal. And the human dancers interacted, they practiced kind of human-like, ape-like movement, but just things like preening, relaxing, copying one another, playing, improvising, doing a lot of the behavior that we as humans naturally do as children as well. But putting it in this context made us see humans differently. So quite a lovely project, actually. We can also look at site as a setting to invite participation. And here we have a lovely image that some of you might recognize from several years ago. Every couple of years, there is a project called Big Dance UK that tries to get as many people dancing the same dance at the same time on the same day as possible. In 2016, we had Akram Khan, choreographer Akram Khan, created the movement for Big Dance, and different groups of young people, older people, all different ages, learned the choreography and then performed it on the same day, the Big Dance Day. Here's an image from Trafalgar Square. And I really love this because there's a real sense of everyone coming together and celebrating dance as one. So you can also bring dance into the public square to encourage higher visibility and a wider sense of participation. Okay, so another example we can have of site dance is this wonderful one from 1970. Sight can be a way of changing our understanding of space from movement. Now, in this piece by choreographer Trisha Brown, based in New York City from 1970, the piece is actually called Man Walking Down the Side of a Building, and that's all it is. The only thing that's changed is our perception of the walk. So there's actually a man suspended by a harness from his pelvis, and he walks from the top of the building down the wall to the bottom. And it's kind of a slow motion walk, but by disrupting our normal way of seeing walking, we get a totally different view on space by going by following this line of the architecture. So here's a lovely example of space and architecture. Another example that I really like is a choreographer called Willie Dorner, who makes a series of choreographies dependent on the city that he is in by working with dancers who are highly athletic, trained in partnering and sometimes gymnastics and parkour and contemporary dance, and brightly colored, fitting themselves into various spaces in the urban atmosphere. So he takes sight very much for the spaces that it offers these bodies to create these performances of bodies in urban spaces, which are actually like sculptures that anybody could happen along and find. So I'll just briefly touch on something that looks like a lot of writing, but this is a project that I took on in 2015. This is an excerpt from a chapter I wrote in a book where I attempted to categorize different possibilities of becoming involved with an outdoor setting through dance, because I thought actually the great thing about site-specific dance is it gets people outdoors and it gets them involved in nature and possibly doing something that they might not have done. So roughly what I did here is I created a table where I categorized performances that had taken place in different outdoor settings over the last 10 years. And I looked at those ones that sort of brought us to see and appreciate nature. On the left, looking at how sight dance brings us to view nature. In the middle, we have projects that bring people to be involved with nature. Maybe they have to hike for a ways to get somewhere. The Liquid Landscapes project with Stephen Koplovitz and Task Force gives us more sort of story about how we're involved with water, for example. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you get projects which invite people to be more involved with nature or the outdoors, either by participating in the performance in some way or joining in, or maybe by following certain instructions that the choreographer or the artist might suggest. So there's actually quite a lot of site-specific performance that takes place, and some of it is much more adventurous even than we can imagine. So here's a short image or a window into a project that I took part in 2006 for my PhD, which was about planting trees outdoors with kids. So in a sense, it fits into this table as an experience of sight if you get involved and plant trees. Part of the dances that the dance performance that I did was about kind of recognizing the different shapes and patterns that living animals, sorry, not animals, living trees and living organisms make, and then getting involved with school children to plant trees as part of this sort of study. So that's the Twig project. You can also read more about that, Sight as Experience. And here's another example of a project that I helped produce in Malta when I was in Malta several years ago. This is a piece called Mesh by Vanessa, which is also a participatory street-based choreographic project where the dancers create different shapes, including just simple things like tunnels, and invite the public to weave in and out of these shapes as part of their performance. Here are some other images from Mesh. This has taken place in festivals across the north of England, including Leeds and the Northwest and the Northeast. And it's very much about joining in with what the public is doing in a playful, non-invasive, fun, and colorful way. Okay, so my last example here is of Sight as Experience is Seven Sisters Group. They are a really interesting company that work a lot in sight-specific dance. The artistic director, Suzanne Thomas, has a background in fashion design, so costume is really important, as well as visual arts. They have a very collaborative approach, and they devise work by looking at joining movement, text, story, acting, voice, video, etc. And most recently, they've created an interactive technology strand to what they do. So as you can see in the image here, there's an iPod, which is being followed by the audience members to take them into the swimming pool, where they then see a combination of live performance that's actually happening in the swimming pool with performers from the English National Ballet in this case. And then they can also look on their iPod, and they have headphones that are telling them another story, another layer of the story, which is a memory being narrated by a character called Submarina. And she's talking about her experience of swimming every day and loving her practice of swimming, but also her experience of living through World War II and how that impacted her as a young girl. So the piece is called Like a Fish Out of Water. It was produced in 2012 as part of the London Olympic ceremonies, and it has quite a lot of different scenes in it, including Submarina talking about watching the men get their swimming costumes on and sort of showing off. Here's a scene from that. And then she's also remembering different aspects of dancing and swimming in the water, and she has these different sort of apparitions that are floating by as her dancing memories of herself. And then finally, to end, I just wanted to bring your attention to this other rather local initiative whereby you can order a sight dance to your doorstep. If you would like to contact, they are on Facebook. They are called Tamar and Joe. They're based in Hull, but I know they travel. And they have offered sight experiences as in the form of Christmas doorstep dances. So you can actually book a delivery dance performance to your door by this duet, who have been responding to the COVID-19 crisis by bringing portable dances that can be done on people's doorsteps. So they're actually offering these performances this month. I think they still have space available. If you're dying for the perfect Christmas gift, you can call on Tamar and Joe and get a dance delivered to your doorstep. And then finally, I just wanted to finish with the invitation to really recognize also how sight dance can open up our possibilities for working with dance on screen. So if you'd like to visit on YouTube, you can see an example of some of our screen dance work that our students have done. And this piece called Soul Fire by a recent graduate, Sophie Rushworth, really looks at her relationship, her moving dancing relationship with the landscape, different landscapes that she is filming in, from forests to seaside. I think filmed mostly in North Wales, but also in Yorkshire Dales as well. And it's a wonderful opportunity to really bring screen dance opportunities into our choreographic imagination. So that's another thing that sight dance brings us. It brings us dance on screen. So now I'd love to hear from you. What are your favorite places to dance, and why might that be? Maybe what is the most unusual place you've ever seen dance happen, live or on screen? It could be from this presentation. Hopefully some of the stuff that I've shared here today has been new for you and sparked some ideas. And what else does dance do that when it happens in the street that it can't do in the theater? That's another interesting question to wonder about. What can dance do when it happens outdoors that dance in the theater cannot? So thanks so much for listening, and I would love to hear from you now. Love to hear about your experience.
Well, thank you very much, Malaika. It's Zazel here, and I'm just going to have a little look to see if we've got any questions. I don't think we have just yet, but I'm interested to ask you a couple of questions, actually. And my background is certainly not in dance, but I've really enjoyed your talk today. And it got me thinking about a couple of places that I might have actually seen, you know, dance happening, or unusual places where I could see it. And you mentioned Dartington in Devon earlier on, and I know there they've got a theatre that's sort of outside, that's built up of all bits of sort of grass banks and hedges for the wings and things like that. How would that change the dynamics, really, if you were going to do something in the theatre but then you were to bring it to that kind of setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Dartington is a wonderful location because it's been the home for a lot of dance innovation, particularly in the 20th century, but now continuing today. I know Wayne McGregor Company have a lot of residencies there. I myself organized Contact Festival Dartington, a festival that took place there for a number of years. And I know that those very grass banks that you talk about, I think it's called the Tilt Yard, have been the source of some wonderful inspirations for movement material throughout the last few generations, I would say. So if you take a performance that's meant for indoors and bring it outdoors, you have to consider certain things like, where is the audience going to see it from? What's the angle? How does the time of day and the lighting contribute to how it's going to be viewed? Of course, the acoustics change also. If you bring music outdoors, it can suddenly just get sort of lost almost in the space. So you have to either have a very clear, very good sound system, or a good plan for live music as well. And actually, in response to that, one of the most unusual places that, or one of my favorite places to dance is actually on the Tilt Yard. Those very grass banks that you mentioned, and they have a kind of like a reverse stepping pyramid shape. And we were performing in one of the sections of Stephen Koplivitz's Liquid Landscape project, where we got to roll down the grass banks, which was terribly exciting because it's such a precious site that's absolutely not allowed on a day-to-day basis. But I would say that one of my most memorable dancing moments, which is part of the project that I was helping to direct to, was the moment where we got to choreograph movement that made us appear and disappear from behind the grass banks, because the audience was watching from below. So you could see you had to consider the eye line of the audience, so they could see these kind of heads popping up and lowering down. And then at the end of the performance, we all rolled down the banks, which was super fun. But it also really brings a different perspective, because the architecture of that space lets you hide, lets you reveal, and it can also tell a whole story depending on how you use that site. So there's a lot of different things that opportunity brings, and for me, it's much more rich than just there are of course an infinite number of things that can be done within a theater too, but the perspectives and the shapes that a space like the Tilt Yard offers is really exciting and creatively rich.
Well, thank you. Yeah, because that gives me just a different perspective about a space that, as a layman I've seen, but wouldn't have really understood how it could be used to that extent. So that's really good. Just coming to one of your questions that's on screen, what is your favourite place to dance and why?
Well, interestingly, I don't think I could pin down one, but I really love studios with wooden floors. I think the texture of a place is really important to me. So I really appreciate a wooden floor that's clean. I love our Studio 5 at the University of Chester's Kingsway Creative Campus. I have to say, out of all of the dance studios I've danced in and had the privilege of working in my life, it is one of the most beautiful. It has these windows on two sides that are nearly floor till ceiling, looking out on trees, this expansive space and this high ceiling, so you really feel like you can jump. There's like a real invitation there. So I do love the dance studio. I love beautiful dance studios, but I also love big spaces. So beaches are quite fun to practice on, and soft sand that enables you to have fun with rolling, that sort of thing. And a place like Dartington that has a wide expanse of soft grass is also a really fun place to dance. I think surfaces that invite you to interact with them can be quite fun, and I appreciate those very much.
I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how you mentioned about audience participation, and how do you put something on like that and know that the audience is going to be brave enough to come and participate with you?
Yeah, that's a really good point and a really good question. So I think a lot of site-specific dance performances, you can either do a lot of organizing to get people there, and I know that the Liquid Landscapes project with Stephen Koplovitz was an enormous undertaking, but they actually got huge numbers of audiences to attend, but they also did a very massive campaign around the project, around the, I think it was either 6 or 9 sites that took place around Devon. So there was a big sense of publicity that made that audience know about the project. But then if you get something like a street festival, for example, we have the Now Northwich Festival in Cheshire, which Cheshire Dance organize and have organized for a number of years, which our students and graduates have been very active in participating in. So if you have a gathering of people coming together, that can be a great way to get people involved and excited about dance. But I think most people, tend to recognize the sort of performance element of dance, but then you have possibilities for interaction when you get things like the Mesh project, for example, which is a much more subtle performance score that starts with very simple scores like weaving. What happens if the performers just weave a pathway through the city square? And then sometimes you'll get kids that they just pick up on that, because we all have kind of played follow the leader sometimes, and it can be a lot of fun to do that. So kids can often be the first ones that pick up on invitations for participatory dance. But as you saw from some of the images from Mesh, very quickly other people as well get involved. So I think it's about subtlety, and it's also about openness, and finding ways to blend with what's already going on in a site, particularly in a project like Mesh, which is not necessarily about a big kind of dazzling performance with music and lights, but it's almost like a kind of a happening, or something. You sort of see that something's going on and it piques your interest, and there's a sense of an open invitation, and that's something that the dancers in that project also practice. They practice having an outward openness and an invitation to whatever they're doing, linking it or feeling that there's a connection or an open invitation to what's already happening in the public square. So I think that's another interesting sort of performance perspective that brings in that sense of invitation and welcoming for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming to your second question there on screen, and what is the most unusual place that you've ever seen dance happen?
For myself, I think I've enjoyed seeing dance happen on train station platforms and in train stations. I've seen at least 3 different wonderful dances take place as part of train station platforms in London and other parts of the world. As part of my PhD project, which involved planting trees and giving dance performances in an overland journey from England to China, engaging in some train platform dances was one part of my project. But I've also seen Seven Sisters Group do some amazing location-based dances in train platforms with quite striking fabric that was just sort of flowing, like a dress with billowing silk in bright blue that kind of fills the whole part of the upper crossway of a train station platform. I think it's King's Cross Station in London that they had a performance at. And I've also seen some kind of lovely flash mob activities that come up with I think it was a station in London. I can't recall which one, but I know Kate Prince's Zoo Nation company have done some amazing sort of flash mob street dance performances in train stations. I think they're one of my favorite places because it's kind of unexpected, but there's loads of people, and people from all walks of life are passing through train stations as well. So that's one of my top picks.
I think flash mob has definitely, that's really kind of opened up dance to the masses, because it's one of those things that easily kind of goes viral. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've seen more of in terms of dance. But thank you very much for that today, Malaika. It's been really interesting and really eye-opening as to all the different sorts of places and the different ways that dance can interact with the environment. What I'll do now is I will pass over to my colleague Mark, and he will just send us on our way.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Well, that rounds things up for today's session. We hope you've enjoyed the session and found it really useful. We are running many more kitchen sessions throughout December and January, so please do check out the schedule and sign up for any others that you're interested in. Just go head across to chester.ac.uk and have a very good evening. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.